Okay, so I may have a slight obsession with my adventures with Superman. I'll probably make some videos later on doing more of a deep dive into the characters and storytelling methods, but today I wanted to begin by exposing probably one of the best third wheels ever written. Third wheels can be incredibly frustrating, or incredibly cool. Sometimes played off as the quirky best friend or a variable to a love triangle, they don't always have the best reputation. Jimmy Olsen's character has existed about as long as Superman's. He was originally depicted as Superman's pal, a total dummy that was constantly in need of saving. When I first started watching My Adventures with Superman, Jimmy seemed like a bit of a throwaway character. I felt like he was just there to tease Lois and Clark about their feelings for each other, and then totally ruin the mood where the romance was starting to pick up. However, seeing as I have now rewatched the series an embarrassing amount of times, let me tell you, Jimmy is not just any third wheel. He is a realistic character. Gasp, shock, I'm literally floored. He's not just a plot device. Wow, who would have thought? And from the perspective of someone who finds themselves consistently single, Jimmy's pretty relatable. Not to play the victim here, God has granted me a season of singleness for his glory and my good, but I'm all for healthy singleness representation, especially in a character who watches their best friends get together and handles it with class. At the beginning of the series, Jimmy and Clark are portrayed as best friends and roommates since freshman year of college. Jimmy knows about Clark's powers but hasn't said anything because he wants to let Clark tell him when he's ready. This means he's known for at least 4 years, which really shows Jimmy's level of restraint and respect for Clark's personal life, especially given the fact that Jimmy is all about the supernatural. Then the romance picks up, and your boy Jimmy is the first to support it while at the same time keeping everyone focused on their jobs. Jimmy kept things grounded and reminded us the relationship is not always the most important part of the plot, without being a total buzzkill as he himself was a shipper. Jimmy gives voice to the audience that wants a plot with romance and action. This leads me to my next point. Jimmy is a huge Clark and Lois supporter, but they are not his entire world. I can't with third wheels that are treated like they only exist when they're around the main characters. And here we're given a third wheel who is a main character, so he still has to be important. But he's also human, so he's going to have to deal with some jealousy. We see this start to happen in episodes 4 and 5, where Clark and Lois start to get closer, and Jimmy sees the consequences their relationship can have on the friend group as a whole. Clark and Lois aren't just crushing anymore, and if they begin an official relationship, Jimmy will officially be a third wheel. So, he's got a decision to make. He can either backtrack his initial support and totally e-boy his way through this. He can complain about how much time Clark and Lois spend together, bash relationships in general, find someone to be with so he just doesn't have to be alone, etc. Or he can do what he eventually ends up doing and continue to support his friends while cultivating his own personal life. I think a lot of us have had the experience where 2 of our friends start dating and the group dynamic shifts. It has to. However, this realization can be a bit hard to come by, and episode 5 really drives it home for us that Jimmy finds a lot of his identity in his friendships with Clark and Lois. Oddly enough, Steve is really helpful in snapping Jimmy out of this, revealing one of the greatest lessons we see Jimmy learn: the importance of crafting a healthy interior life. Americans are individualists. We want what we want when we want it, and we protect our private time and interests like a dragon hoarding gold. This is not what it means to have a healthy interior life. Interior life is what makes us. It is the routine habits that we form, like going to church on Sundays, jamming out to our favorite songs on the drive home from work, trying a new food every week, or studying a language in our free time. The particular actions that make up who we really are as people. And the thing is, having an interior life includes being alone. I learned this lesson from my mentor, and she said that loneliness, when ordained by God, is not actually so bad. What we need to do when we feel lonely is let it sit with us so that we might get over our fear of being alone in the first place. Jimmy learns that being a lone wolf isn't the end of the world, and even embraces the concept in a healthy way. There's also the other attributes of his interior life which, again, portray a realistic character. For example, Jimmy is a photographer, not a writer. I know this isn't the first reiteration of Superman to do this, but I want to emphasize that having Jimmy Olsen be a camera nerd distinguishes him from Clark and Lois while still having him be an integral part of the team. Then, there's Flamebird, and making Jimmy a total conspiracy theorist. This was such a quirky modern take that adds so much to the character, and that he's actually useful with Superman stuff. Most of his theories are correct. Also, he's not afraid of the dangers that can come with rooming with an alien, and oh yeah, he's super rich now. After Clark blew up his ship, I was wondering where the Fortress of Solitude was going to come from, but I guess Jimmy can just bankroll everything now. Also, a bonus part of Jimmy's character, which I absolutely love, is that he spends time with his family off-screen. They could have so easily written Jimmy like he was totally dependent on Clark and his family for a sense of community, but nope. Jimmy has a realistic life. He goes to visit his parents on the weekend and only spends Thanksgiving with the Kents every other year because he's close with them. This seems so random, but when you take into account all the ways the writers try to subtly flesh out Jimmy's character, it's just a fantastic detail. Also, I just love modern characters having healthy relationships with their family. I get having mommy or daddy issues, that can be a lot to a plot, but sometimes it's just nice to have a character that vibes with their family. After getting a reality check about his third wheel status, Jimmy makes the right choice and continues to support his friends while also giving them the space they need. I started playing a game where I spot all the times Jimmy excuses himself just to let Clark and Lois be cute on their own. And this doesn't totally eliminate him from the show. When the going gets tough in episode 9, Jimmy's the one to turn the tide of the parasite battle. Nobody knew what to do, but Jimmy chose to expose himself on his personal platform and make things happen. Then in episode 10, he chooses emotional maturity and tries to get Clark and Lois to come clean and stick to the no secrets rule. The big takeaway is that Jimmy is meant to be a character that grows. When I first watched the series, I probably wasn't wrong in finding him a bit annoying, but as you take a deeper dive, really look at the subtext of a lot of what's going on, you see Jimmy grapple with his feelings of abandonment and learn how to be his own man. If anything, I hope the show writers keep the dynamic as it is and continue to have Jimmy living his best single life. I can see him being the type of character to have some wacky adventures with others without always depending on Superman for the easy way out. I would love to see another Jimmy Jelena Olsen team up. I think they're the only characters in the show that are fully prepared to handle the multiverse and all of the Lois and Clarks that can come from that. In order to write a good third wheel, heck, just a good character, you need to give them the dignity of being a real person. They're complicated, they're confused, they grapple with their emotions, change their mind, make it up again, and hopefully become better than they once were. That's stuff we all have to do. Being a person is hard, but it's not about what you expect from life, it's what life expects from you. So that's my take on Jimmy Olsen from My Adventures with Superman. I hope to see good things from this character going forward, and yeah, that's all for today, guys. Remember, God loves you, and so do I.